Oh, welcome back, everybody, to Bill's Chat as I adjust my camera. Bill's Chat live, and not just live for any week. Luka, it is Chiefs week.
Hell
And
yeah.
we've done a few of these, and we've been more confident than we are this week, I think, at different points. Isn't it weird, though? By the way, Luka, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. You could have rolled right into it. I'm
Yeah.
doing good. I mean, honestly, the week has been flying by, it feels like. So overall, like I knew in the head it's always Chiefs week, but it feels like it's almost like tomorrow is the game itself, just with how this week's been going. I know you've been busy, I've been busy and stuff like that. But I can't wait for this game to get here, sooner rather than later.
For those watching, I am done messing with my hat for the show. I've gotten feedback that I mess with my hat too much. So no more of that. Isn't it weird that on a week where the Bills are coming off of a 40-9 victory, it feels like the temperature of the fan base is mostly negative? Like, we can't score, we can't throw, we're gonna get waxed by the Chiefs. Is that odd to you?
Um, yeah, no, I mean, fan bases thrive in negativity, it feels like. And I mean that in the sense of when there's little, even if there's little cracks in the armor, there's things to not like about what you're seeing. It's something that is easily magnified and picked apart and are good discussion points for the masses. Whereas when things are going well and stuff like that, those conversations are quieter. It's individuals, a lot of people just kind of minding their own business, moving on with life. And so to be here with how this season has gone so far, even coming off of a 40-9 win in Carolina, that wasn't even as close as that score indicates. It's not surprising at all because there's just so many things, trade deadline coming up with clear needs and desires of what people want out of that. And that would be pieces that move the needle and affect things both offensively and defensively, asking for the offense to run more efficiently because it just feels like it hasn't been clicking on all cylinders for essentially the entire season outside of a quarter plus, and I'll just do the plus because I'm sure there's other times it's looked decent that I'm not thinking of, but overall I'm just thinking of the fourth quarter against the Ravens when it was just at full power all of a sudden, or AKA Josh Allen was just going Superman mode. But there's just a lot that can be built up right now in a negative space that your mid-season, things like that. It's amazing what a big matchup, though, against, say, the Chiefs can do if you get the result to go your way, and how that might be able to potentially, let's call it, ease tensions with what this season could potentially become.
Yeah, there's a lot I want to get into with this game, the bigger picture. How big of a game is it? We've seen regular season Bills Chiefs games before where the playoff result goes the other way. We've seen that too many times for my liking. I found a matchup this week that gives me a lot of optimism for the Bills that I want to get into as the show goes on. And then we'll talk about just some other aspects of just this rivalry and what the Bills will finally have to do to get over this Chiefs hump. Let's see here. The passing game just looks hard. One throw beyond 15 yards against Carolina is concerning. That's a good place to start. Now, look, if you've been, thanks by the way, Tegu man for chiming in there. If you're familiar with Luka and I, you know that we are on the train, driving the train for wide receivers virtually every draft season. 2 years ago, we both wanted the Bills to aggressively trade up for Brian Thomas Jr. Last year, all due respect to Max Harrison, who looked fantastic in his debut, Luka and I were pounding the table for Luther Burden. It has been receiver, receiver, receiver. We did not love the Keon Coleman idea, but we were both happy they took a receiver. So I think I'm going to say that, but I'm also going to go to something Luka said. I think the general thought of the Bills offense right now lines up with what Luka says about how it just looks hard outside of the fourth quarter of the Ravens game, and does line up with this comment we got here about the passing game looking hard. My question, as a bit of a challenge back, keeping in mind that I absolutely want the Bills to add a receiver at the trade deadline. I absolutely want the Bills to be able to throw the ball when it counts. Does the offense look hard, or does it just look different than we expected? Because when you look at some of those offensive efficiency charts that come out, the Bills are in the upper right-hand corner of almost all of those charts. And there was a couple that got posted today that really caught me off guard. Like, really, Joe Brady's like considered the third best offensive coordinator. And I think when you have a Lamborghini of a quarterback, a Ferrari of a quarterback like Josh Allen, it's just hard to wrap your mind around that this team could actually become a run first, run centric team where the passing game is just a supplemental piece of the offense, which is absolutely what this offense has been, save for the fourth quarter against the Ravens. I don't know that that style can win this team a Super Bowl, particularly with the defense I expect them to play. But I also think, Luka, it's possible that we're being a little harsher on the offense than we need to be because of a bad showing in Atlanta and what has been a more of a lean on the running game instead of this future Hall of Fame quarterback that we've all fallen in love with.
Um, you can sell me on that. And I put it that way specifically because I can understand, especially with how well this offense looks when James Cook is carrying the ball and when things are happening with that. Allen's under center. You're working off of that. I love this dynamic, even that kind of goes with this point that you're hearing from reputable national media individuals. And I like to say reputable because I'm not talking about just your Skip Baylesses of the world, of course, that kind of highlight when they look at things and when they're trying to assess where faults may be. And this is not just a Bills conversation, by the way. This is like NFL football quality conversation. Noticing that offenses that get away from under center right now seem to be struggling mightily. And then all of a sudden, once they just get their quarterback back under center, work off of that, reintroduce a good amount of play action from that point, it seems to allow things to operate a lot more smoothly this time and, this day and age. And all things are like that. And it feels like the Bills are in that criteria. You can absolutely sell me on that. Where it kind of falls short for me, though, is I don't like what I see when it comes to any level of the passing game and how it feels Josh Allen is not comfortable. That's where I draw the line. My eye test tells me that Allen in 17 is not comfortable majority of the times when he's dropping back to pass the ball in any situation, in any capacity, whatever you want to call it. It's just either he's not trusting what he's seeing because receivers aren't separating downfield, of course, or just the play design themselves might just not be well constructed and called to allot for creative ways to get these receiver space that they need and or allow Josh Allen to kind of have these easy read situations in the passing game. It's just, you see other offenses achieve those kinds of things, and yet this one does not. Has it needed to for the most part? No. The Carolina game, the Jets game are absolute blowouts from the start. Really just doesn't look like what it needs to be. The Dolphins game, they got through it and everything like that. It's just, the Falcons game is not something to linger over, but at the same time, it just feels like the perfect example of just why it's not necessarily where it should feel like it can be. And that is mainly because of who your quarterback is. I'm very okay with what we're seeing in the run game and stuff, especially when they lean on James Cook. I'm not okay with what we're seeing when it's outside of James Cook. But regardless, you pay James Cook to be the guy, and it feels like that message was received, especially after the bye week with what we saw in Carolina. You just continue to work down that road and utilize that. From there, I just the advanced analytics and the charts that you see when it comes to offensive efficiency and stuff, Josh, I call those things their what do you want to call them? Interview material. And that's the stuff that Joe Brady will be presenting to people and being like, look how efficient my offense operated and things like that. Please hire me for your position. That's great. I would believe that maybe there is a touch of an overreaction to how in the negative space, but at the same time, I don't know if you can quite sell me on the sense of if they're, you mentioned Joe Brady in one category might be the third best offensive coordinator in the league. The eye test and just understanding a lot of football to be watched, it just doesn't feel like that is, every snap. And that's where there's a middle ground somewhere. There's somewhere where it's like, hey, things aren't operating as well as it feels like it should be with Josh Allen. But at the same time, yes, it's not an absolute bottom 8 offense, just a disaster class going on week in, week out, that it feels like, there's a good chunk of fans out there that I believe think that in the back of their head, which I scratch my head to.
I like Caleb's point here. It does feel like the Bills were ahead of the curve on the shift back to running the ball because, we saw really at the tail end of the Brady Manning era, the Breeze era, where it was really just everybody was shifting to nickel. You had safeties coming out of the draft, shifting to linebacker. Everybody was getting small and fast on defense. And what the Bills were ahead of the curve on was we are going to be a team that can run the ball. I do think part of that also has to do with just how they lost that game against the Bengals in the playoffs in the bad weather where they were just completely out physicaled and they couldn't run the ball. And I think they wanted to change their identity a bit. So I do think that's a good call, although it is kind of strange that they were ahead of the curve offensively, but they've built their defense to actually be a run funnel defense. So I can't, I don't know what to do with that, but I'm with you, Caleb. I get that. Um, I do still think that is valuable when you're a team that plays in Buffalo in the bad weather. I do think that running the ball is very important. I also think that there's been a gross miscalculation on the weapons that are here, whether it's expected development from Keon Coleman or impact from guys like Curtis Samuel, Elijah Moore. I'm gonna wait on Joshua Palmer. I did like what I saw in the first quarter of the Atlanta game. I trust a lot of, the film junkies that say he's getting open quite a bit. I do think he's a nice piece of a good offense. I don't think he can be the piece. So, but the one optimistic point I landed on, Luka, and we can get into this a little bit later, but I think that for me I need to be sitting here on October 29th believing this team can win the Super Bowl. And it's hard for me to get there right now with as hard as it looks just in the traditional drop back passing game. But where I get there and where I'm like, okay, I can really get there if they beat the Chiefs. But where I look at it and say how I can get there is you saw marketed improvement from the defense just from inserting guys like Hoyt, Ogunjobi, and then Harrison. And then I'm also going to throw in Jordan Hancock. It sounds simple, but just the added speed in the secondary. You saw it on Hancock's tackle of Dowdle when he broke away. You saw them able to play more man coverage with Harrison. That's not nothing. And I think that the Bills were just cripplingly slow on defense. You're seeing that with the Steelers right now as they invested in a bunch of older players and they can't stop anybody on defense right now. I think the Bills injected some speed in there. I think this defense can get to a point where it's average. But where I get really optimistic is the one thing this offense is lacking is a passing game. Well, the best player on the team, the best player maybe in franchise history is Josh Allen. And I am optimistic that he can turn it around. And Luka's wide receiver, Gabe Davis. And I am optimistic that this offense, when the rubber hits the road, is going to be able to throw it. I do think they need another weapon inserted. To answer this question, Gabe Davis is not going to play on Sunday. Eric Turner from Cover One already tweeted that. And if you pay attention to him, I mean, he's basically like this with Gabe Davis. So if he says it, it's true. All right, Luka, I want to talk about this game from a gambling perspective because the Chiefs are favored by 1.5 points. And as a Bills fan, as somebody who lives in Bills world, that makes sense to me because I'm thinking, okay, the Bills have struggled offensively. They haven't even looked really great or dominant in any of their wins up until last week, but it still wasn't like a sexy throw for 400-yard win. It was like James Cook just broke a bunch of long runs and Andy Dalton threw up all over himself. Where the Chiefs are really humming now with Rashee Rice and James Worthy. Oh my God, Xavier Worthy back in the lineup. But I think if I were to take off my Bills hat and throw on my betting hat, and I just looked at this from the standpoint of two really good teams that are mostly even every time they play, two elite quarterbacks. The Bills are home. The Chiefs played on Monday night, so they have one less day of rest. The Bills are not only coming off of a bye, but they're coming off of a very easy game against Carolina. And now you have the Chiefs on a short week coming into this game on the road, and they're a road favorite against an elite quarterback and a top tier team. I would be all over that as a bettor. But as a Bills content creator, I look under the hood. And to your point, sometimes we're more critical of our own team. Just as a bettor, would that stand out to you?
Yes. I'm amazed. I will say this. It does feel right now, I mean, just for basic number purposes, according to DraftKings, there's a 60% lean on Bills money line right now. And then I think it's essentially 50-50 spread, but it is 51% Bills to cover 1.5. What surprises me is that line is not moving. Um, it's one of those lines when you look at it that, as you said, Bill's lens makes all the sense in the world. But from a outsider perspective, from a betting perspective, all of these things, the variables line up that tell you the lean should be there for the Bills. And right now I see things out there that say essentially that the tickets and cash are all leaning towards the Bills spread. But then from there, your tickets and cash, although you have to understand money lines are almost always favorite leaning because it's just parlays are involved, all that kind of stuff. Just conventionally, it does feel like the public, even outside of there, is understanding that the Bills have things going their way in the general sense that you look at. So what I find fascinating is that you're not seeing line movement because of that. And it's kind of just stood pat. And to me, that indicates that something's going on, that this is going to be one to pay attention to betting perspective wise on a lot of late money in situation and see where ultimately you're starting to get that late action, because from there, that's probably a telltale sign of where potentially sharps are getting their information from, and other individuals that are in this for the for the profits. What is going on with that? So I I it's going to be one that probably stands at 1.5 either way, but I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we see this flip, Josh. I will say that too. I would imagine closer to kickoff. I said it, I think, during our podcast, and I'll say it again. I would not be surprised that by 4:25 kickoff, this is Bills minus 1.5, because it feels like one that eventually there's just going to be too much weight on it. And right now, to me, this is a game that feels as if both sides are going to go into it cautious a little bit. I think it's going to be a feel it out situation, and also try not to show everything that's going on. So I would tell you, just if you want a betting tip real quick before we go into breakdown, the number being at 52.5 right now is outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, you should, and the public is on the over, mind you, as well. And as anyone knows, the conventional wisdom tells you, Vegas makes money. And if the public is heavy on one side, probably go the other. The under 52.5 feels like a phenomenal line to me. I mean, that's a lot of points in an outdoor setting with two teams that are absolutely, they know each other. It's almost like a divisional game. I don't understand that one at all. But the line itself, it is interesting to me that it feels like books are telling you Bills 1.5, 2, getting 1.5 to 2 makes a lot of sense, and that's where it should be. But yet the public seems to be leaning that way as well, and it's not moving accordingly. So there's a lot of confusion as to kind of, if you look at it from a betting lens, where to go with the result of this game.
I feel like if you're going to bet the Bills, you might as well just bet the money line, because you're going to get a little bit extra juice anyway, and it's only 1.5 points. But I'm no expert. I want to ask, before we get into the stat that I think is really going to favor the Bills, I just want to ask you a simple question. And I see, I want to pronounce his name right. What do you think it is? Teguman 77. It saddens me. I think the Chiefs win by 10 or more points. All right. Before I get off on my how big is this game, I want to remind everybody. I put a tweet out about this from our podcast account earlier. Last year, the Chiefs came here on November 17th. The Bills took the field that day without Matt Milano, without Spencer Brown, without Keon Coleman, which at the time felt like a really big loss because he was coming off of a really strong performance against Seattle. And there was one more really high level player. I can't remember. There's four very, very key impact starters out in that game. Oh, Kincaid. Kincaid missed that game too.
Yeah.
And the Bills end up winning that game by double digits. So I remember the tone that week was, we have no chance, and yada yada yada. And I know Luka and I both picked the Bills to lose that game. And that's where I would say that it probably isn't as bad as it feels. The Bills are a 5-2 football team. And in a lot of ways, it feels like they've given a couple games away. But in a lot of ways, we should remember that 5-2 is a pretty darn good record. All right, Luka, let's talk about how big of a game this is because you know the history between these two teams. And unfortunately for the Bills, since 2020, after 2020, they have won every single regular season game against the Chiefs, but have yet to do it in the playoffs. And we have seen now 4 instances in 2021, 23, 24, I guess 3, where the Bills win the regular season matchup and then don't win the playoff matchup. They won the regular season matchup also in 2022, but they didn't play the Chiefs in the playoffs in that season. How big of a game is this? I will set that up with I think there are 2 sides here. There's the side of Bills fans where I reside that say it's a massive game because right now both teams are trailing in their division. And if you play with the New York Times playoff machine, it tells you that the winner of this game still has a very good look at the 1 seed and the loser of this game probably doesn't. There's the other side that I do wonder if there's some like premeditated coping going on, what they think the result is going to be that says, I don't even want to win this game because I've seen the Bills win in the regular season and lose in the playoffs. Let's flip the script. Or just maybe more rational, like at this point, beating the Chiefs in the regular season doesn't do it for me. I've seen that before. I need to see it when it matters. Where do you fall on the big game, don't care about this game, not so big game, it's regular season, wake me up in January scale?
I mean, it's definitely not the biggest game in the world, but it's also far from, I don't care if whatever words you want to paint with that. It doesn't do anything for me. Lose this game because then it'll flip. Like all of that thought process to me is like that's not how things work. Like that's just not, the Patriots used to beat a team both in the regular season and the postseason a bunch. It's the Colts could do the same. The Steelers of their era could do the same. It's just, you don't have that. Like what I would say is we went into this and even early stretch of the season as things were going well, but even not as well as we wanted. The 1 seed is something that felt very obtainable. And then all of a sudden, magically, after that Patriots Sunday night game, I haven't heard that mentioned once. And it's understandable. I will say that. I mean, for one, you have this Colts team right now in Indianapolis that is just absolutely shredding apart everyone. And on top of it all, they have a 4th place schedule to keep going away at all of this. So they have what I would consider the inside track on the 1 seed. But if you truly want to believe that there's something here and you look at it at the end of the day and say, how can we get the best path to where the goal is? You essentially need to win this game. Like if you lose this game, it opens up a whole lot of avenues that will lead to a long road when it comes to the meaningful games. But yet a simple win over this game makes it a lot more difficult for plenty of your other competition, while also putting you on an inside track for the more comfortable path in your own right. So I lean more towards it's important. It's a big game. As a general football fan, it's one of the top 3 games on the schedule every year. It's just, you get Mahomes, you get Allen, you get the Bills, you get the Chiefs, all the recent history, the importance of how it shapes the landscape of the playoffs and the AFC picture as a whole, all of these things. This game is included in all of that. And even as a Bills fan, it's like am I going to be heartbroken if they lose this game? No, I'll be bummed out that it does kind of puts a kibosh on any hopes of a 1 seed. And then honestly, on top of it all, it's just another loss in the column that then you look at the Patriots, for instance, it's like they have an incredibly easy avenue their own right because they are also playing a 4th place schedule. So from there, it's like you can't get too far behind, although you do have that game against them later on in Foxborough, but you just don't want to separate yourself too much here because ultimately then you're going to be barking on the road all playoffs. Essentially, that's the path you have with a loss in this game. So it's not even necessarily that the importance is solely because of, hey, are the Chiefs coming to Orchard Park in January, or are we going to Arrowhead in January? It actually has a little bit more to it for both sides, mind you. If the Chiefs lose this game, it puts them in a very interesting situation with the AFC West as well. So there's that added dynamic where for the first time in what feels, I mean, it is forever in this matchup, both these teams are not in the top of their division as they play this game. And another loss, or another loss in the column is going to put them definitely behind the eight ball more than they would like to be with where they have their aspirations and what the goals are for this season. So it's a pretty significant game for not even just the simple Chiefs Bills dynamic, but even greater dynamics outside of that matter when it comes to January and when both of these teams are hopefully going to be trying to play some games.
Right now, according to the New York Times playoff machine, the Bills have a 14% chance of getting the 1 seed. The Chiefs have a 16% chance. If the Bills win this game, their chances go up to 21% from 14. If the Chiefs win this game, their chances go up to 25%. What both teams with a loss go down to 5%. That doesn't have to be the end all be all. There's upsets we can't see coming. The New York Times playoff machine is just odds, and it's like simulations upon simulations where the Patriots play the Dolphins 1,000 times. The Patriots are going to win 900 of those. I don't know. You know how that all works. So it's just percentages, but it's just something to keep in mind. I also think that when you talk about these divisions, it is not just the 1 seed. I do think that whoever loses this game, to Luka's point, could very well be on the path to a wild card. We look at this from a Bills-Patriots lens. The Chiefs, after they play the Bills, have games against the Colts and at the Broncos. So you want to talk about a very important stretch for the Chiefs coming up. Now you have a situation where I think it's entirely realistic, if not something I would just predict. The loser of this game could end up being the 5 seed, the top wild card. And guess who I think is going to be the 4 seed? Baltimore Ravens. So you want to go to Baltimore week 1 of the playoffs? I don't. Win this game. But, there's a long season ahead. You don't know what's going to happen. Like Lucas said, the season is not going to end for either one of these teams Sunday night. But it is a big game, and there's no hiding from it. Luka, I've kind of alluded to this multiple times now, and I want to talk about a matchup in this game that I do think is going to favor the Bills. Since Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have started going head-to-head, they have played 9 times, regular season and postseason. In those 9 games, the Bills have sacked Patrick Mahomes 2 or more times in a single game, 3 times. The other 6 games, it's either 1 or 0. And we know Brandon Beane's mission multiple times after losing to the Chiefs has been to reinforce that defensive line. After the 2020 playoffs, he went out and drafted Boogie Basham and Greg Rousseau with his first 2 picks. After the 2021 season, he went out and paid all that money to Von Miller. The next year, he went out and paid all that money to Leonard Floyd, and Daquan Jones was thrown in there. And we've seen him draft more defensive ends. They spent 3 of their first 4 picks on defensive linemen this season, one of which is an absolute home run, and it was the 4th one. But these Bills have tried everything they can do to get Patrick Mahomes to the ground with mostly failure results in playoff games. I don't know if it's going to be enough to win. I think there is a very good chance that this Sunday in the Bills-Chiefs game, it is the best a Bills defensive line has looked against a Chiefs offensive line in any game we can remember. I have one caveat when it comes into what I think the Bills' defensive strategy might be. But when I look at this Chiefs offensive line, they've given up 14 sacks this year, but those numbers are skewed in games when Josh Simmons hasn't played. They gave up 3 sacks against the Commanders last week. There was 3 more sacks given up against the Lions. They're really struggling without Josh Simmons. He's excellent. Not sure when he comes back. He's not going to be back this week. And this Bills team just got an infusion of a healthy Greg Rousseau. Joey Bosa has been excellent. Michael Hoyt's coming back. We did lose Ed Oliver, but Deion Walker has been hitting the ground running. Larry Ogunjobi's back. I think there's going to be pressure to be had on Patrick Mahomes. I think they can get him to the ground a couple times in this game. I think win or lose, Luka, one of the talking points coming out of this game could be, holy cow, Bean might have actually solved this defensive line issue.
I'm with you on that point. The edge play that's been taking place of late, specifically, Josh, I will say is the most consistent among the rotation. And what I mean by that is it's not because just Joey Bosa is coming out there and dominating. So it's like, hey, when 97's out there, at least you know you're going to get high end edge play. And or when Greg Rousseau's out there and Groot's doing his thing, that's going to be when it's impactful. It's like, no, it's Bosa and Rousseau. And I mean, God bless him, AJ Epinesa when he wants to. And it goes even further down than that. And then on top of it all, that little thing is we did lose at Oliver, but as you even hinted to, Deion Walker has been what feels like a revelation inside. You know, you're getting your kind of like Calais Campbell like production at the interior defensive line with someone of a freakish size and yet can move the way that they do. It's been nice. And then when you look at all of that, and then on top of it all, as you brought up, you have their best tackle just away from the facility right now. He will not be playing in this game. And Jalen Moore for them at left tackle has been anything but comfortable for Mahomes when sitting in the pocket. And then Juwan Taylor is just an absolute meme every time you see him. The tackles are a struggle bus. And then on top of it all, yes, they have Creed Humphrey in the middle, but they at the left guard position, they have I'm not going to say this name correctly, but Sumaitia. Anyways, their left guard has been meh. And it felt like for years past, Josh, that interior three was really sound, really, really stout, knew what it needed to do, and did it at a high level. And just the sprinkle on top of it all is Trey Smith is on the injury report. He was a limited participant today with a back designation. That is something to pay attention to, because if they are down Trey Smith, they effectively, in my eyes, only have one decent offensive lineman, being their center, Creed Humphrey. And then from there, it's kind of pin your ears back and just get at 15. And it feels like something that can be obtainable for the defensive line as you're bringing up here with how they're playing. I mean, Hoyt, Ogunjobi, Bosa, Rousseau, Epinesa, Deion Walker. I mean, these are all guys that I would say a majority of us, Ogunjobi might be the outlier here. Like, I don't think he really made too much of an impact, but also he wasn't highlighted in any way where we were like, oh, that's a problem either. I mean, I'm even going to stir the pot a little bit here and throw in good old Jordan Phillips now at this point, since he's on the active roster. He has at least made a couple splash plays here that it's like, these guys are performing well on the defensive line. They should be able to, what it feels like in this current form, dominate the trenches against the Chiefs, which is something, as you're pointing out perfectly, does not happen very often. And it feels like because of that, we might get a very different looking result when it comes to how this 60 minutes plays out, because the one thing you can look at with all of those 9 games, win or lose, I believe this. Even those ones where Von Miller sealed it out, or like he crashed it down and Taron Johnson got the pick, or they just, was it 2021 on Sunday Night Football, they went into with the rain delay and the peanut butter jelly sandwiches, and then they dominated in the second half coming out of it. Like, all of those games, the one thing you can say was consistent with the Chiefs was Mahomes was always comfortable. Like, there was never a game in any of these moments where Mahomes was not comfortable. So this has the potential for once, for the first time in this Mahomes versus Allen situation, that the Bills can absolutely make Mahomes' life miserable. It just feels like a good matchup for them. And that is something I will absolutely hang my hat on and believe that that is your path to success. And I'm here for it. I feel like that's realistic. And I would love to see that come to fruition, once we're done Sunday.
So I just laid out why I think the Bills' defensive line could shine, and now I'm gonna basically counterpoint myself. If you remember back, the first time Allen and Mahomes went head to head, it was during the COVID year. It was a regular season game in Buffalo. There were no
Yep.
fans in the stands. McDermott had a very memorable strategy that game. Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran for
Mm.
165 yards on like 25 carries. And the story of that game was McDermott essentially begged the Chiefs to run the ball. He played 2 and 3 down defensive linemen. He backed his safeties up way up off the line and basically dared the Chiefs to just run the ball down the Bills' throats. And they did, to their credit. But what that strategy does is it takes the ball out of Mahomes' hands, it slows the game down, and it invites variance into it because when you run, the clock is running. Instead of it being 14 drives apiece, maybe it's 8 drives apiece because you know when the Bills have the ball, they're going to run the ball too. Why did McDermott do that? The common thought back then was that he in 2020 didn't quite know what he had yet in these Bills with Josh Allen. He thought the Chiefs were the better team. He played that game like an underdog and tried to get it to the fourth quarter where it was close and maybe you could steal it. Good strategy if you're an underdog. Not and then as the years went on, he's like, "No, I can punch with these guys. We're just going to go in there and play our game and see what happens." And they've punched with them. I think because of multiple factors, we could see that 2020 Bills Chiefs script come back. One, the Chiefs are not good at running the ball. The best runner on the Chiefs is Patrick Mahomes. He's excellent at it. But Isaiah Pacheco is not going to play in this game. He had a leg injury off of Monday night. He's week to week. Rashard Smith, their backup, is averaging 3 yards a carry. Kareem Hunt is basically a goal line back, and he is not a very good player at this stage of his career. And when you compound that with the fact that Rashee Rice is playing like a top 5 receiver in the sport, Xavier Worthy has speed to burn. Hollywood Brown is absolutely no joke out of the slot. Juju Smith-Schuster is absolutely no joke out of the slot. And Travis Kelce is still a top 5 tight end in the sport, top 2 statistically. And Patrick Mahomes is playing at an MVP level, while Sean McDermott has a secondary that currently has Jordan Poyer starting and for a while, Tre'Davious White starting. I can absolutely see a world where Sean McDermott comes in and, for lack of a better term, plays prevent defense and says, hand the ball to Kareem Hunt 30 times, Andy Reid, and let's just see what the score is at the end of the game. What do you think, Luka?
Yes, I would put a little. I have this thing with Brashard Smith. I will say, I like him. I think he's got pop, and it terrifies me in the sense of the unknown of what he can do with Andy Reid kind of driving the wheel is something where, as you mentioned, he doesn't exactly have the production yet to show that Andy Reid truly knows what he can get out of him, how he can utilize him properly. There was a game a couple weeks ago against the Raiders that they were just kind of, it was done as soon as kickoff happened, so they were just getting out of it, and that was the most touches that Brashard Smith had. I do welcome this strategy though, because the alternative is, committing to the run like you would any other time, which still isn't very successful. And then on top of it all, you have Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce. It's not going to be Hollywood Brown from the sounds of it. Juju Smith-Schuster, so on and so forth. You have all of these guys, and Brashard Smith also would be in that equation from a receiving concept as well. That it's just like that is not a path to success when it comes to playing the Chiefs right now. You do have to welcome them to be patient, run it a lot, try to do the thing that it feels like any other team that likes to run the ball can do at a very high level against this Bills defense. You now with Mahomes there, hey, you do that too, Reed. I think that is what makes a lot of sense. And on top of it all, the cherry with this all is the Bills have built this defense, Josh, to do that very thing. The Bills have built this defense for this game, for this matchup, for that philosophy. It feels like it's like, hey, you don't have anything that threatens us in the running game. You want to throw it and spread it around against us. We are going to do everything we possibly can to keep it in front of us and welcome you to just revert to a run game, revert to a control, and do all of these things. And if then you can do that successfully, maybe we will tilt our hand in the second half. But I mean, I wouldn't even expect them. They would just let it happen unless it really gets away from them early on for the first half. It's a battle of wills when it comes to that, of who's willing to be patient, who's willing to just accept what's being presented to them. And ultimately, I welcome it, because if Brashard Smith and that run game is the thing that's beating you down against this Chiefs team, well, then we're just not very good in regards to everything going on. And if you welcome Xavier Worthy bombing it all over you and Rashee Rice, well, then I think you just screwed up when it comes to understanding what the better path to success is in this matchup. So I'm with you. It makes a lot of sense from a strategic standpoint, and it feels like something that McDermott will ultimately have the mindset of in game planning this entire week.
All right, let's get to our predictions, and then I want to finish this up talking about some trade deadline wish list stuff, because this is the last live show we'll have before the trade deadline. And holy cow, Luka, I hope next week at this time we're talking about somebody the Bills added. I guess we should talk about the injury report real quick. Also, Joshua Palmer, Daquan Jones do not seem like they're going to play this week. McDermott previously described both as week to week. Neither practiced today. He didn't really come off of his week to week spot on Monday. My guess is neither practice this week. Both are ruled out by Friday. And then I would bet both start practicing next week ahead of the Dolphins game, but don't ultimately play. And then they come back for the Buccaneers game, would be my prediction at this point. Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard were both full go at practice this week. That is great sign. And I think both will be needed in a big way against the Chiefs and this passing game. All right. What was I going to? Oh yeah, prediction time. All right. Well, Bills are 5-2. Chiefs are 5-3. Chiefs are 1.5-point favorites. The Chiefs have not beaten the Bills in the regular season since 2020. Let's just not bring up anything else. What is going to happen on Sunday in Orchard Park in maybe the last ever Bills Chiefs game in the stadium?
I love you finishing with that, because even the reporters asked Mahomes how he feels about playing in Buffalo and things like that. And he highlighted the fact, as he was just rambling on with his answer, how he likes playing in historic stadiums, and he acknowledged this one, has a deep history to it, and how this can potentially be the last time that he steps foot in it to take on the Bills and take on Josh Allen, depending on how things progress, of course, later on in the season. So, it does have a feel that potentially that is there, of course. This game is one where, in my head, this is the game that you don't have to tell Josh Allen, you don't have to tell any receiver, you don't have to tell any defensive lineman, linebacker, corner, safety, anyone. You do not have to tell anyone at any point in time how much to care about this game in regards to how important it is to look good against the Chiefs. You can't have a playoff. If you want to perform, if you want to play at your highest level, this is the game that matters the most. And this is the one every year that gets circled both by the media, the fans, and even the teams. So from there, it's a thing that the Bills build this team constantly to be competitive with this other opposition, with the Chiefs. And to me, the Chiefs are also a team right now, even though as they're, 28-7 over the commies and shutting out the division rival Raiders. It's also the Marcus Mariota starting quarterback Commanders and, well, the Raiders. So in those performances, I don't see this mega dominant force that some are. I will also say this: Travis Kelce is really on the back. He is on hole 18 of his career right now. He is on the last tee box, and he's doing drops and missing plays with Mahomes that we have never seen before. And even though he was able to step it up on Monday night, I look at Travis Kelce and I look at this offense, and I don't see the thing that frightened me in years past anymore. I just don't see it anymore. Rashee Rice is the biggest problem they have, and Xavier Worthy's speed is great. But even then, Josh, if you look at how they utilized Xavier Worthy last week, It almost feels like they're trying to develop him into the complete opposite. Get the ball in his hands quick, see what you can do with short to intermediate routes, things of that variety, that they're not trying to just hit him downfield. That could change on a dime, but I I just think the matchup suits the Bills well enough, as crazy as that might sound, that my prediction is that the Bills will ultimately get away with the win on this one. I just, if I had to put a score on it, it's early in the week, right? We don't truly know where injuries lie, things like that. I'm not a big fan of doing score predictions on a Wednesday evening, but if I were to put a score prediction on it, I mean, it's going to be a tight one. And one that feels right is like 24-23. Like that, it will be something of that variety, whether it's 24-23 and the Chiefs, scored a touchdown to bring it to 23, whatever it is. I don't know what we're talking here, but I think realistically, the Chiefs don't have anything that ultimately threatens the way you need to threaten the Bills. I mean, the Chiefs' strengths are, of course, Mahomes and the boundary passing game and things like that. Something that McDermott, if he has full focus on it, will just try to keep in front of him as much as possible. And then also on the defensive side of the ball, it's their boundary corners and things of that nature. And it's like, look, the conversation with the Bills always is, what the hell do we have on the boundary anyways that matters? Like, nope. McDuffie, have fun taking away Keon Coleman. It doesn't matter. He takes himself away. Like, it doesn't, the strengths match up better for the Bills than it does the Chiefs. So ultimately, my prediction really is, sitting here on Wednesday, I'm not ultimately super comfortable about it. It's the Chiefs, but it just, the strengths of each team, how they're built, where they currently stand from a health perspective on top of it all, it lines up for Bills' success more than it does Chiefs in my eyes. So I just look at it as a close Bills win here on Wednesday night.
I like it. I think it makes a lot of sense. I feel like, so the NFL season is weird, right? Because how you feel about a team in October is not necessarily how you feel about them in December. There's been many a times where I'm like, man, it's November. I wish the playoffs could start right now because the Bills are humming. And then by the time we get there, we have AJ Klein off the couch starting at linebacker. So I'm just going to be honest. Right now, I feel like the Chiefs are a better football team than the Bills. I think part of that is a lot of the Bills' important players are either out. I'm going to include Joshua Palmer in that. I'm going to include Ed Oliver in that. He should come back. Um, I'm going to include Matt Milano and Bernard in coming back, and Dalton Kincaid's not fully ramped up. There's a lot of variables right now with these Bills. I also feel like the Chiefs are just a more balanced football team right now. I don't know that it has to stay that way. I am unreasonably optimistic after what I saw from Max Harrison last week, Luka. I would have been able to do an entire show on him tonight. I am so excited about the speed, the personality, the mindset he had out there in tackling and filling gaps. I cannot wait until he is a full-time starter, but I don't expect that this week. And I just look at this Bills Chiefs dynamic right here in late October, early November when this game kicks off, and I just feel like the Chiefs are just a little bit better right now. That doesn't have to mean anything in a sport where the team that's a little bit better loses all the time. But sitting here predicting, I would say that I'm going to predict that the Chiefs win this game. I would love to say that Maxwell Harrison, as our great friend Ismail's is on board with, is going to start this entire game, and he's going to get a chance to run with Xavier Worthy all game. Let's just feel his speed. I don't think it's going to happen. I think there's probably going to be 50% of the snaps again that Tre'Davious White's out there, and at that rate, like, hello, Patrick Mahomes is going to find Rashee Rice or Xavier Worthy or Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown, whoever's on White, and just throw it to him. Oh my God, Luka, he's going to be on him like White on Rice.
Oh my God.
Yes. All right. Focus, Josh. Focus. So I'm going to say the Chiefs win this game, but I'm like you. I don't feel overly confident about it. I think when you have two great quarterbacks, two teams that have been there, done that in the regular season, I don't think either. I think fans will panic whatever team loses. I don't think teams will panic. I think it's going to be a very professional game. The only thing that can make these teams panic is if they suffer a massive injury in this game. But I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be close. I'm not expecting a blowout either way, but I'm going to predict a Chiefs victory. All right. let's get. Oh, I got to do a score, don't I? I'm going to say I like what you said
to.
earlier. I think this is going to be the under. I think the Bills are going to funnel the Chiefs into running, and I think the Bills are going to also play some time of possession. I wouldn't be shocked if this is a like 17-16 kind of game, 20-17 kind of game. I'll go 20-17. Butker hits a late field goal, and blah blah blah. All right, Luka. Let's talk about the trade deadline because I am as obsessed with an NFL trade deadline as I ever have been in my life. And there's multiple reasons here. One, we're talking about a loaded AFC with, I think, 4 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And you could make a case that 2 of them are already out of the way in Burrow and Lamar. You'd have a really hard time convincing me Lamar is out of the way after what happened last week. But at least for now, it's hard to imagine a scenario where Burrow makes the playoffs and you can get yourself to a point where Lamar is out of the way. So I want the Bills to put their best foot forward right now. It's also really hard for me to imagine this Bills team as presently constructed going into a playoff setting and beating teams like the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Eagles, the Lions on a 3 or 4 game winning streak when their best pass receiver is either Dalton Kincaid or Joshua Palmer or Khalil Shakir. I don't know that the Bills are going to be able to go out and get a Brian Thomas Jr. or even a Chris Olave. I would love it. I would overpay for it. I absolutely would, because those guys are not just answers this year, they're answers for years to come. But I am firmly on board with the Bills going out, and even if it's an overpay, Luka, paying for a half of a season of Rashid Shaheed. So I find myself on Twitter multiple times a day trying to see the latest trade rumors, the trade nuggets. I need this to happen. And I will tell you this without one shadow of a doubt. If the Bills win this game on Sunday and it's dominant, let's say the Bills win 30-17 and Mahomes looks lost.
Jeez.
And they still don't make a trade on Tuesday, I'm going to be more discouraged on Tuesday than encouraged, because I hate this collection of receivers as presently constructed, recognizing that Palmer and Gabe Davis are coming back. Will they make a trade by Tuesday?
Yes. Just hearing the phrase Gabe Davis will be back is just,
slowly. He'll be back slowly.
I shouldn't make a noise like that in the microphone, but that is.
Air Gump, we see your question. Luka's going to answer, but he's a Shaheed guy, so he'll get to your answer in his answer.
I'm going to get to that real quick. Yeah. Shaheed moves the needle. Shaheed is someone that I think I saw you even sent a tweet out about this, and I loved it so much. As everyone, if you're not aware, Josh obviously runs our Twitter primarily. I think the biggest misconception about Shaheed is that he's just a downfield threat gadget, just one gear of speed when it comes to just being that burst of energy. And hey, we're just trying to get a guy in house that take 4 or 5 shots downfield, maybe a hit on one, blah, blah, blah. It's like Shaheed actually has footwork and ability in him that is far beyond that. And it feels like a untapped potential there that is just being absolutely wasted away in New Orleans right now. And I would love nothing more than to bring a guy like him in and just see what it can do for this offense. Because I say this all the time. I say it with the Sabres. I say it with the Bills. You got to trickle guys down into where they are best fit. And right now that just doesn't happen with the receivers. I'm not saying just get anybody in and then allow that to happen. It's kind of basically what happened with Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper was at least a respectable X and boundary receiver that it's like, you just plugged him out there. He's going to take care of whatever outside corner is just having to respect him and things like that. And then everyone else just does their business and does their thing where they fit best. From there, it's just like, okay, what do we have now that does that? No one. What can we bring in that does that? No one. And so, at least in-house when I say no one. So Rashid Shaheed, I mean, you can sell me on Olave. I don't think the Saints are, would they move him? Absolutely. I don't think they're trying to move him, nor do I think the price would make sense when you have Rashid Shaheed, who feels like a much more acceptable move if they're the Saints. I mean, the dream is, of course, Brian Thomas Jr. That's a name being thrown out there. Whoever it is, and yeah, let me just put it this way. Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
But how about both? But yeah, we'll disagree. I'll be ecstatic if they get either, but we disagree on how we'd rank them.
I rank Shaheed over Olave personally, but I'm also in that. I'm not calling it like for like, receiver for receiver. I'm calling it what the cost would potentially be, things of that. Like, I'm taking that into account. It feels like, hey, can you move a third or a fourth for Shaheed? Yes. Olave is going to be a little bit more, maybe not substantially more, but a little bit more, that it's like, you could still do it, but Shaheed to me moves the needle enough that I would be okay with it. I think a move has to happen, for one, by Tuesday, and two, will happen by Tuesday. There's been enough smoke out there talking about the Bills actively calling about receivers and trying to figure out what the weapon situation is with numerous teams, that it's like, there is something there. Bean is working the phones. The team in the front office is working the phones. There's an itch. There's something going on that, regardless how this game goes Sunday, I imagine we will hear about a move by the deadline. You mentioned your excitement for this trade deadline. I'm also in the same boat when it comes to that. I think it just, an offensive weapon being the potential return is what excites people a little bit more. But from there, it's got that NHL trade deadline vibe to me, and for a Bills perspective, where it's like, you need to bring something in to get this team over the line potentially. And that's what the NHL trade deadline is. It's like, you have your buyers and your sellers. There's a lot of moving pieces because of expiring contracts and things like that. It's one of the best trade deadlines in the business of all sports. This one for the Bills right now has that vibe where it's like, it's not good enough right now, but this is a championship contending team, or it should be. What can we bring in-house from an offensive perspective that can move that needle and get it over the line? And that's what brings the excitement for it. And it's the first one we've had like that in a very long time that, I firmly believe 100% a move is happening. It's who it will be, I'm not exactly sure. The dream scenario to me is Brian Thomas Jr. And I will say, just on another random side note with the trade deadline, now that we're hearing Florio talk about AJ Brown being actively shopped without actually actively being shopped, the reunite of him and Vrabel absolutely, I don't want to say terrifies me, but just rubs me the wrong way, because it feels very realistic and possible. Just makes a lot of sense for the Patriots. It makes a lot of sense for AJ Brown. It makes a lot of sense for Vrabel. The list goes on. And having to deal with that in the short term when it comes to that game in Foxborough in a few weeks, that would suck.
So Air Gump has said a couple things I really agree with here. And then I also want to talk about another good question there about Jacoby Myers from Teguman. We're going to go with T-Man. We'll call him T-Man.
T-Man.
All right. First thing is, people really look at this Amari Cooper thing wrong. I was so stoked when they traded for Amari Cooper, because what Amari Cooper was exactly what this team needed. A more explosive Stephon Diggs at that stage. But he just fell off the map. It was the right move, but it didn't work. That doesn't mean that the Bills never go hunting. It's just, it didn't work. But I agree. I think Cooper, when the Bills traded for Amari Cooper, my first tweet from our account was, go win the Super Bowl. And I went live that day and said, that's exactly what they need. He's going to slide in at the top. Everybody else is going to slide down, and it's going to make sense. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. I'm going to go to Air Gump's other question. I get Shaheed maybe had for a discount, but this team needs someone who can realistically operate as a wide receiver one. Air Gump, you have found the exact divide between Luka and me. I agree that Olave is not, if you look at it like dating, okay? Shaheed is the date that you're bringing to your best friend's wedding. You want to impress all your friends. You're going to have a great night. It's going to be memorable. And then you say, hey, you have a great life. Thanks for a memorable night. Olave is the date that on the first date, she wants a ring. You're marrying Chris Olave, because the price you're going to have to pay is one that is going to warrant a contract extension, because the Bills cannot afford a cap hit of the 5th-year option. And this is where the divide between Luka and I comes in. Luka does not trust a long-term extension with somebody with his extensive concussion issues. And I totally hear what he's saying. I don't trust Brandon Beane's draft history with wide receivers. I want somebody here for the long term, which again, concussion issues. Here's where Luka's at. Like, how long term is he here for? So that's where we're at. I'm with you. Luka would be with you if it wasn't for the concussion issues.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Shahid is a more well-rounded player. No, I'm sorry. Olave is a more well-rounded player. We think Shahid has never been asked to do that, although the charts say that he probably could. I would take Olave over Shahid in a vacuum, and because of the long-term potential, I'd be ecstatic with either. Let's finish it up with this question on Jakobi Meyers. Would I be upset if we ended up getting Jakobi Meyers? Upset isn't the right word because I want the Bills to get better in the passing game. And I think they need a deep threat. But if you can't get Brian Thomas Jr., if you can't get AJ Brown, if you can't get Rashid Shaheed, you can't get Chris Olave, and you can't get, say, Jawan Jennings, at some point, are you just going to say, well, we struck out, we're good with what we got? Or are we going to say, hey, Jakobi Meyers running 60% of the routes might be better than Keon Coleman? That at least he might get open. So upset. I wouldn't be upset because I applaud the Bills for making a move. I'd be upset if they spent like a second round pick on a half a season of Jakobi Meyers. I like Jakobi Meyers. He's a nice player. I don't think he stresses the defense in ways that Shaheed, Olave, Brian Thomas Jr., AJ Brown would. But I do think he is a professional receiver that's been more productive in his career than any receiver on the Bills roster. And I think he would be an addition to this receiving group that just needs one somewhere. Luka, we're about out of time, so unless you have like a different point on Jakobi Meyers, we can move on from that.
No, I mean, yeah, upset is a tough word to be. Making the move is the most important thing because it's recognizing you need to do something differently. It's just, it feels like with what's potentially out there, Jakobi Meyers just isn't the one that feels like the answer. But from there, it's like, can it become the answer? Sure. You brought up the perfect line for it is Keon Coleman isn't doing anything for you. So maybe just plugging Jakobi Meyers in there will actually get you some sort of better result. That then again, the whole concept and point is at least you can then start having other individuals slot in their more appropriate roles that it just jives better. The machine is operating at a much smoother level that elevates the overall passing game, and you get the similar results like the down the stretch Bills passing game we saw last season. And that's the ultimate hope, right? Like that's the goal. You're not trying to trade for a 2020 Stephon Diggs right now midseason. You're not thinking that it's possible to get a Brian Thomas Jr., although it kind of feels like it is, to do that and get that true X factor out there potentially. What you're trying to do is just bring in another body that it has a better potential than most of the guys out there, that then allows them to also slot where they're appropriate, elevate everyone's game entirely. And then all of a sudden the overall passing game machine is a much smoother operation that then can achieve better results and just get you over the finish line like it feels like it should, especially when 17's under center.
I agree completely. All right, Luka, the next time I chat with you all will be halftime of Bills Chiefs. I'll be here wherever you're watching this now. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Once we get to 500, you have a shot to win a Keon Coleman signed helmet. And hopefully that goes quickly because who knows how much longer he's going to be a Buffalo Bill. And then Luka and I'll be back Monday morning. Win or lose, we've done plenty of Bills Chiefs post games. We've done plenty of playoff loss post games. We will be here for you Monday morning, win or lose, to talk everything Bills Chiefs. And we'll be back next Wednesday, hopefully for a loaded show, not only talking about Bills Dolphins, but talking about Rashid Shaheed or Chris Olave or Brian Thomas Jr., AJ Brown, Jakobi Meyers. I don't know, maybe a defensive player that we aren't thinking of, but I hope Brandon Beane makes a move. But for Luka, I am Josh McCarty. I like Weston's comment here. He's a buddy of the show. He's a Chiefs fan, but he's always been good to us. Pray for everybody's mental health. I agree about that for this game. Bills and Chiefs fans like to argue on Twitter. Can't wait. Ismail's always appreciate your support around here. We will see you next week on Bills Chat Live.